The day my dad told me, "Your brother needs the college money more," I felt something inside me go quiet, like a door locking from the inside. I was standing in our kitchen, holding my acceptance packet with shaking hands, while my dad acted like my future was just a luxury item we couldn't afford. Then my phone buzzed. A scholarship email landed in my inbox minutes later, and my dad had no idea that the power he thought he had over me was about to disappear. "I'm Camila. I used to think families had rules you didn't question, like, parents protect you. Love is not a competition, and fairness, if not perfect, at least matters." In my house, I learned a different set of rules. Rule 1 was that Ethan, my older brother, was always the priority. Ethan was gifted, sensitive, under pressure. Ethan was just going through a phase. Ethan was a good boy who made one mistake. Ethan was everything that deserved grace. And me, I was the one who was strong, the one who could handle it, the one who should be mature. That's what my dad, Richard, always said. Like strength meant being okay with getting less. I was 17 when I started working at a grocery store after school. Not because we were struggling, we weren't. My dad owned a small construction business, and my mom, Elaine, kept the books. We lived in a 2-story house, with a yard big enough for my dad's grill, and Ethan's project car that never ran worked because I didn't want to ask for anything. Every shift I folded my jealousy and swallowed it down with my pride. Ethan got new sneakers without even needing to ask. I bought my own winter coat and told everyone it was just my style. But there was one thing I didn't think I'd have to fight for: my college fund. I found out about it when I was 12. My mom was sorting paperwork at the dining table, and I saw my name printed on a statement. I remember the excitement lighting up in my chest. "What's this?" I asked. Mom looked up, surprised, then smiled like she was relieved I'd stumbled on something good. "It's your college savings," she said. "Your dad and I started it when you were little." That night I went to bed imagining campus trees, libraries that smelled like paper and coffee, a life that belonged entirely to me. For years, whenever school got hard or I felt invisible at home, I reminded myself, I have a way out. I studied like my future depended on it, because it did. By senior year, my days were packed with AP classes, tutoring sessions, volunteer hours, and late-night scholarship applications. My best friend Jade used to text me memes at midnight, and I'd respond with, "Can't, I'm writing essay #11. Jade would send back, "You're going to escape this town, Cam. I can feel it." And I believed her. The first acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday. I came home clutching the envelope like it was fragile glass. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely open it. When I saw the words, "Congratulations," I swear my heart did a full backflip. I ran into the kitchen, breathless. Mom was chopping vegetables. Dad was at the counter scrolling on his phone, wearing his work hoodie, even though he'd been home for an hour. "I got in," I blurted. "I got in." Mom's face lit up. She dropped the knife carefully and grabbed my shoulders. "Oh my God, Camila," she said. "Baby, I'm so proud of you." I expected my dad to look up with pride, maybe even surprise, maybe something that said I mattered. But Dad's expression didn't change. He just slowly put his phone down like I was interrupting something minor. "Which school?" he asked. I told him, and his eyebrows lifted a little more, like he was calculating a price tag, then celebrating. "That's not cheap," he said. I laughed nervously. "I know, but I've been applying for scholarships, and we have the college fund." Mom's smile flickered, just slightly. I didn't notice at first. Dad leaned back against the counter, crossed his arms, and said, "About that." The air in the kitchen tightened, like a storm forming inside the walls. "What do you mean?" I asked. Dad exhaled like I was being difficult. "Camila," he said, slow and firm, "your brother needs the college money more." I blinked. "Ethan's already in college, and he's struggling," Dad snapped. "He's got housing, fees, books, transportation. You don't understand how expensive it is." My mouth opened, then closed again. I felt my cheeks heat up, like my body didn't know whether to cry or fight. "I've been preparing for this for years," I said. "That money is for me." Dad's eyes sharpened. "You're acting entitled." That word entitled hit me like a slap. Mom stepped in carefully. "Richard, she's not being entitled. She's worked so hard." Dad cut her off. "Elaine, stay out of it." Then he looked back at me, his voice dropping into the tone that meant I was supposed to obey. "Ethan needs support right now," he said. "You'll figure something out. You're smart." So that was it. That was his solution. "Ethan gets the money, and I get a compliment dressed up like a consolation prize." I stared at him, unable to breathe properly. I'm your daughter too, I whispered. Dad's jaw tightened. Don't start. And then he said the line that finally snapped something in me. Don't make me the bad guy. Camila, I'm doing what's best for this family. I looked at my mom, expecting her to argue, to defend me, to say, no, that's wrong. But Mom's eyes were glossy, and her hands were shaking around the carrot she'd been cutting. She looked like she was drowning silently. That was the moment I realized. She wasn't agreeing with him. She was afraid of him. I backed out of the kitchen like I was leaving a room where the oxygen had been sucked out. Upstairs, I collapsed on my bed with my acceptance letter spread open like proof that I hadn't imagined my own achievement. I tried to cry, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I just lay there, numb, staring at the ceiling. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. New email. I didn't care at first. I almost ignored it, but something made me tap it anyway. Maybe habit, maybe fate, maybe sheer desperation. The subject line read, "Congratulations, Camila Alvarez, Scholarship Award Notice." My fingers went cold. I opened it. It was real. A full scholarship for tuition based on academics, community work, and my essay about being the invisible child in a loud family. I'd written it at 2:13 a.m. after Ethan had slammed the door in my face for being annoying when I asked him to lower his music. The email said, "Full tuition covered. Renewable. Immediate confirmation required." I sat upright, heart pounding, the numbness cracking open into something sharp and electric. My first thought wasn't even joy. It was this. Dad can't control me anymore. I heard footsteps in the hall. Mom knocked softly, then came in. She sat on the edge of my bed, and for a moment she looked like she wanted to speak but didn't know how to start. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't know he'd say it like that. I showed her the email without a word. Her eyes widened. She pressed a hand to her mouth, and this time the tears came fast and quiet. "Oh, Camila," she breathed. "Oh, my baby, you did it." I expected her to be purely happy, but there was fear in her. Too like she knew this would cause a war, and she was right. When Dad found out about the scholarship, he didn't celebrate. He got angry. He called me back into the kitchen like I was an employee who had messed up a shift. "So you think you're better than us now?" he said. I blinked. "What? You're going to hold this scholarship over our heads," he continued, voice rising. "Act like we don't matter." Mom snapped. "Richard, stop." But Dad pointed at her. "No. You stop. This is exactly what I mean. She gets one award and suddenly she's too good for family decisions." I stared at him, stunned by how he could twist anything into a reason to punish me. Then he said, "Fine. If you don't need the college money, then you won't complain about it going to Ethan." Something in me went very still. I realized he wasn't scared. I'd succeed. He was scared I'd succeed without needing him. I nodded slowly. "You're right, I won't complain." Dad looked satisfied, like he'd won. But I wasn't surrendering. I was planning. That night, I messaged Jade and told her everything. I expected outrage. "I got it, Camila. That's theft," she texted. "If it's in your name, he can't just take it." I stared at the screen. If it's in your name? I'd never actually verified how the account was structured. I'd only trusted the word college fund like it was a promise written in stone. The next day, I asked Mom, quietly, when Dad was at work. She hesitated, then pulled a folder from a drawer like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. "There's something you should know," she said. My stomach tightened. She slid a statement across the table, and the truth hit me like cold water. The account wasn't in my name, that was in Dad's, a family education fund. Technically his, controlled by him, meant for the children, which, in Dad's language, really meant Ethan because Ethan was always the default. I felt sick. "So he can just," my voice shook, "he can just decide." Mom nodded, eyes down. I tried to argue. I did. "He said you'd get scholarships. He said Ethan needed it more." I swallowed hard, anger burning behind my ribs. "That money was my escape," I whispered. Mom reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Your scholarship is your escape now." But I wasn't done. Because if Dad had lied about the fund being mine, what else had he lied about? I started watching, listening, paying attention. I noticed Ethan suddenly had a new laptop, new clothes, a shiny student apartment upgrade. He posted pictures with expensive dinners, smiling like life was a constant reward. One night, I overheard Ethan on the phone in the hallway. "You promised," Ethan hissed. "Dad, you promised you'd cover it." "I can't lose my spot." "Cover what?" The next day, I checked the mail before Dad could. A letter came from a bank with Dad's business logo printed on it. Then I saw Ethan's name typed under account holder. A loan statement. My hands trembled as I stared at it. Ethan had taken out a private loan. Dad had co-signed. And now Dad was using my college fund to keep Ethan afloat. Not because Ethan needed groceries, because Ethan was drowning in choices he kept making and Dad kept rescuing him. My revenge didn't look like screaming matches or dramatic threats. It looked like paperwork. It looked like strategy. I asked Mom for every document related to the education fund. She gave them to me with shaky hands. Jade's mom, Dr. Bennett, was a financial advisor. Jade begged her to help. We sat at Jade's kitchen table with the statements spread out like evidence. Dr. Bennett adjusted her glasses and said, "Camila, your dad is allowed to use it because it's in his name, but there are tax rules. If he's withdrawing improperly, it can trigger penalties. And if he's claiming it's for you while using it for your brother, there could be issues." My pulse quickened. For the first time, I felt like I had leverage, not emotional leverage. Dad didn't care about that. Financial leverage, legal leverage. The next part was the hardest. I had to play calm. I had to act like I'd accepted my role. I smiled at dinner. I nodded when Dad bragged about supporting Ethan's education. I didn't argue when Ethan called me lucky for getting scholarships. And every time I wanted to scream, I reminded myself, I'm not fighting with feelings, I'm fighting with facts. A week later, Dad announced we were having a family dinner with my aunt, Marianne, his sister, who he always treated like an audience aunt. Marianne was the kind of woman who wore crisp blazers and spoke like a judge, even when she was ordering coffee. Dad respected her in that stiff, nervous way men respect women who can't be intimidated. I knew something else, too. Aunt Marianne hated dishonesty. So at dinner, when Dad poured himself a drink and said Camila's going to college on scholarships, so we're putting her fund toward Ethan. Makes sense, right? Aunt Marianne paused mid-bite. I set my fork down carefully. I'd love to talk about that, I said, voice calm. Dad's eyes narrowed. Not tonight. Yes, I said softly. Tonight. Mom went pale. Ethan's jaw tightened. Aunt Marianne looked between us. Richard, she said, what exactly are you doing? Dad laughed like it was nothing. Helping my son. I reached into my bag and pulled out a neat stack of paper statements, withdrawal records, the loan mail, and a printout of scholarship details. I slid them across the table to Aunt Marianne. I got a full tuition scholarship. I said, but Dad didn't wait to find out. He told me the money was mine for years, then took it the moment I needed it. And he's withdrawing it to cover Ethan's private loan. Dad slammed his glass down. Camila, Aunt Marianne held up a hand. Let me read. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Dad tried to interrupt. He tried to explain. He tried to spin. But Aunt Marianne didn't look up until she'd gone through every page. Then she set the papers down and said, very evenly, Richard, you told your daughter that money was for her. You used it as a leash. Dad's face flushed red. It's my account. And that's the only reason you think you're right, she replied. But it doesn't make you honorable. And I'm going to be blunt. If you've been withdrawing it improperly, you're flirting with penalties and tax consequences. Do you understand that? Dad opened his mouth, then closed it. Ethan finally spoke. Aunt Marianne, I needed help. She turned to him. Ethan, I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to address what your father is doing. But you're going to hear this. You are not entitled to your sister's future. Ethan's eyes flashed. She has a scholarship, and she earned it, Marianne said, which means she earned her freedom too. Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly. This is a family matter. Aunt Marianne stood too, and she was shorter than him but somehow taller in the room. It became my matter when you used deception, she said. Now, sit down. Dad sat. I hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected him to listen to anyone. My hands were shaking under the table, but I kept my voice steady. I'm not asking for your money, I said. I'm asking you to stop using it to control me, and I'm asking you to admit you were wrong. Dad's throat worked like he was chewing anger. Finally, he muttered, I did what I thought was necessary. Aunt Marianne's voice softened just a fraction. Then do what is necessary now. Make it right. The solution that came out of that night wasn't perfect. It wasn't cinematic, but it was real. Aunt Marianne pressured Dad into setting aside the remaining amount in a separate account, earmarked specifically for my money, that would be used for housing, books, and emergencies since my scholarship covered tuition. Dad hated it. I could see it in the way his mouth tightened every time the topic came up, but he did it because for once, he couldn't bully the situation into silence. As for Ethan, he didn't speak to me for weeks. He acted like I'd betrayed him, like I'd stolen something. And maybe that was the final twist. The person who had truly stolen was Dad, but Ethan had learned to call it love. The day I left for college, Mom hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "and I'm sorry it took me so long to stand up." I pulled back and looked her in the eyes. "Come visit," I said, "anytime you want." She blinked. "Richard, Mom," I said gently, "you're allowed to have a life too." She didn't answer, but I saw something change in her expression, like a seed finally landing in soil. Dad carried my suitcase to the car, without speaking. At the campus drop, he handed it to me like it weighed more than luggage. "You think you won," he said quietly. I smiled. "Not sweetly truthfully double quotes. No," I said. "I think I survived." Then I turned away and walked toward the dorms, toward my future, toward a place where love wasn't measured in who got sacrificed first. The first night in my dorm, Jade called me. "You okay?" she asked. I looked around my small room, blank walls, cheap carpet, a bed that squeaked when I sat on it, and for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like loneliness, it felt like peace. "I'm okay," I said. "I'm really okay." And that's the thing about revenge. Sometimes revenge isn't ruining someone. Sometimes revenge is refusing to be ruined. If you've ever been the one expected to handle it, the one who had to be strong while someone else got chosen, tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my place? And if this story hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs the reminder that their future is worth defending.